Hi everyone, I'm Andrew Zena Hayashi, the Asperger King, and today we're reacting to the video, "The male disengagement era is no longer a prediction, it's happening now, led by mind and masculinity." Let's get into it.
For the last 10 years, social commentators have been making a prediction. They have been warning in increasingly urgent tones that something was coming. Something that would change the face of modern civilization. Something that would redefine the relationship between men and women in ways the developed world had never seen before.
He
called it many things: the marriage decline, the dating recession, the masculinity crisis, the great male retreat. Different labels for the same predicted phenomenon. The generation of men who would, en masse, walk away from the conventional path of pursuing women, marriage, and family formation. For years, these predictions were dismissed. They were called alarmist.
Because it's a bad deal to get married right now.
Subcultures that didn't
it's all risk and no reward.
Well, the predictions are no longer predictions. They are present tense reality. The data is in. The trend is undeniable. The numbers are not just confirming the warnings. They are exceeding them, year after year, with a speed that has caught even the most pessimistic observers off guard. We are now living through what historians, 50 years from now, will look back at and call something specific. They will call it the male disengagement era, a defined period in human history when men in the developed world quietly, calmly and rationally stepped away from the romantic and marital pursuits that had defined male life for thousands of years. And it is not coming. It is here. It is happening right now, in every major city, in every developed country, to millions of men simultaneously who do not know each other but are making the same decisions for the same reasons at the same time. If you are one of the men who started walking this path before the rest of the world recognized it as a path, this video is going to be your moment of vindication. You were not wrong. You were not crazy. You were not broken. You were early. And now
I was early. I did it in high school. I started walking away from women.
I'm going to walk you through the full picture.
And doing my own
thing. The data that proves the era has arrived. The forces that are driving it. The consequences that are now unfolding. And the future that is being shaped in real time by men who decided not to play the game the way their fathers played it. Sit back. This is the documentary moment for the movement you have been part of. The proof, the pattern, the arrival. Let me explain what I mean when I say the era has arrived. Because this is not rhetoric. This is not exaggeration. This is a measurable, datable shift that historians will point to with precision. Every major social transition has a threshold moment, a point at which the trend crosses from minority behavior into majority behavior, a point at which what was once unusual becomes the new normal, a point of no return, when the new pattern becomes self-reinforcing and the old pattern becomes increasingly impossible to restore. We have crossed that threshold. For the first time in modern history, the majority of young men in multiple developed countries are not just unmarried, they are not even actively dating.
I still date when I run into a woman
that will end when they meet the right person.
I want to date her that wants to date me.
Significant percentages off the pathway entirely.
And I do hookups too.
They are content with where they are. This is unprecedented. Throughout human history, the default expectation has been that men
by not getting married anytime soon,
they might delay it. They might struggle with it. They might fail at it once or twice.
Not until
but the trajectory was always assumed to bend eventually toward partnership and family. That trajectory has now broken. And the breaking is not theoretical. It is documented. It is measured. It is happening in real time across the developed world. The male disengagement era is not coming. It has arrived. And the next decade is going to be defined by societies trying to understand what to do with a reality that nobody, not the institutions, not the media, not the relationship industries, not the governments, was prepared for. Let me give you the evidence, because I do not want this video to rest on assertion. I want it to rest on data. The kind of data that, when you see it laid out, becomes impossible to dismiss. Start with the United States. According to Pew Research, 63% of men under the age of 30 in the United States are currently single.
That's a lot of men.
The comparable figure for women under 30 is around 34%. The gap between male and female singleness in the same age cohort is one of the largest ever recorded in American demographic history.
And all the women are dating the top 5% of men.
The majority of those single men are not actively looking. They are not searching. They are not pursuing. They have, by their own description, exited the romantic marketplace. Now move to the Institute for Family Studies 2026 State of Our Unions report. They describe the current environment as a dating recession. Only 31% of young adults aged 22 to 35 are dating once a month or more.
We built a lighter that burns at 1,000.
I'm gonna get that lighter once I have money.
Told us it's too dangerous to.
Less than a third. And among those who are dating, satisfaction levels are at historic lows. The market is not just shrinking. It is, in significant ways, breaking down. Now look at the global marriage data. According to Our World in Data, the global marriage rate has dropped from 8.2 per 1,000 people in 1970 to 4.9 per 1,000 in 2020.
Oh wow, it got cut in half.
A decline of roughly 40% in 50 years. And every projection suggests the trend is accelerating, not slowing.
Oh no.
First marriage rates for women dropped 15% between 2000 and 2018 alone. A stunning decline in less than 2 decades. And the rate of decline has only steepened since. Then look at the international picture. Japan has been documenting what they call Sushoku Danshi.
Japan and China have it real
over
bad.
15 years.
That's what I've been
Researchers
hearing.
estimate that 60 to 70% of Japanese men in their 20s and 30s now fall on this spectrum of romantic disengagement. South Korea has its Sampo
Them
generation,
too.
the 3 giving up generation, with the lowest birth rate in the world, sitting at 0.68 children per woman.
Oh no,
less than
that's
one-third
below
of
replacement
replacement rate. China has its Tangping movement, lying flat, where young Chinese men are explicitly refusing the traditional life script of marriage, children, and conventional success. The Chinese government has tried propaganda, incentives, and
Of
public
course
shaming.
they would.
None of it is reversing the trend. Across the developed world, Italy, Spain, Germany, France, the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, Singapore, Hong Kong, the patterns are the same.
Yeah.
Marriage rates declining, birth rates collapsing, single male populations expanding, dating market participation shrinking, government responses failing. This is not a one-country story. This is not a Western phenomenon.
It's worldwide.
This is not an Eastern phenomenon. This is a global phenomenon, happening simultaneously across cultures, across political systems, across religious traditions, across economic models. When something happens this consistently across this...
The only people it's not affecting is the Muslims. They're popping out babies like crazy still.
many independent variables, it is not a fluke. It is a fundamental shift in human behaviour, and it is what defines an era. Let me give you more data, because the picture gets even clearer when you look at the specific subcomponents. Dating app usage among men is in steep decline. Major platforms have reported losing significant percentages of their male user base year over year. The remaining male users are increasingly fatigued, less active, and less invested in the platform than they were even 3 years ago.
Online dating
Companies
sucks
that build their
ass
business models
unless
around
you're the
assuming
top
endless male
5% of men
are
that
now
women
scrambling
want.
to redesign their products for a male audience that is increasingly difficult to retain. Singles
For everybody
of
else,
entertainment
it's
has
a waste
collapsed in many
of time
regions.
if you're a man.
Industry insiders, when they speak candidly, describe declines of 30 to 50% in male attendance over the last 5 years. Speed dating companies have shut down. Mixer organisers struggle to balance gender ratios. The infrastructure built to bring single men and women together is, in many cases, no longer financially viable because half the intended audience is not showing up. Fertility clinics report unprecedented increases in single women choosing to have children through sperm donation. This is a downstream consequence of male disengagement. Women who expected to find male partners but are now navigating life without them, making the decision to pursue motherhood independently.
Oh
The
no.
data on this is striking, and it represents one of the most visible institutional adaptations to the new reality. Marriage age, for those still marrying, continues to climb. The average age of first marriage in the United States is now in the early 30s for both men and
Oh
women.
wow. It used to
Compare
be
that
in
to
the early
1960s,
20s.
when the average age was in the early 20s. People are not just marrying less, they are marrying much later, with less stability, with less time to build families, and with weaker statistical
Indeed.
outcomes when they do marry. And here is
And
one
with
of the
less
most telling
money.
indicators: birth rates. Birth rates in developed countries are at historic lows, in many cases approaching demographic collapse levels.
Oh
South
no,
Korea
that's
at
not good.
0.68, Japan at 1.2, China
We're
at
headed for a
1.0,
population
Italy and Spain at
collapse.
1.2. The United States is now below replacement at 1.6. Even traditionally family-oriented countries are showing the same pattern. A civilization that does not reproduce itself is, by definition, a civilization in transition. Every single one of these data points is a measurement of male disengagement at scale. Men not dating means men not marrying, means men not fathering, means birth rates. Not sustaining means civilizations not reproducing. These are not separate phenomena. They are different visible expressions of the same underlying force, and that force is what we are calling the male disengagement era. Not a prediction, a measurement, a documented reality of where we are in 2026. So let me explain why this is happening, because the reasons are not mysterious. They are not new. They have been documented, analysed and discussed openly by men for over a decade, even as the mainstream culture refused to take them seriously. The first force is the legal and financial reality of modern marriage. Modern divorce produces outcomes for men that, when men actually examine them with clear eyes, make the institution unviable as a rational contract. Divorce rates of 40 to 50% for first marriages. Approximately 70% of those divorces initiated by women, according to multiple national studies. Asset division that can erase decades of careful financial building.
Oh no.
Alimony obligations that can extend for years.
That's one of the main
Child
reasons
support
I don't
that
want to
consumes
get married
substantial
right
portions of
now.
income for nearly 2 decades.
I don't want my shit
Custody outcomes
stolen
that
by some
statistically
bitch.
favour mothers in the vast majority of contested cases. Men, when given access to this information, and they all have it now thanks to the internet,
Yeah,
perform a basic risk-reward calculation. And
indeed.
increasing numbers of them are concluding that the contract is not worth signing. This
Yeah,
is not
not
weakness.
worth
This
signing.
is not anger. This is what intelligent humans do when presented with unfavourable contract terms in
Things
any other
need to
area of
change.
life. They negotiate, and if they cannot negotiate, they decline. The second force is the technological infrastructure that has made solitary male life genuinely comfortable for the first time
Being
in human
single
history.
is great. It's
Previous generations
peaceful.
of single men lived
Can do
lives of
whatever I
practical
want.
inconvenience. They cooked badly.
Pure
They
freedom.
cleaned poorly. They had limited entertainment options. Their social
Yeah.
lives required physical proximity to others. Their access to information, connection and goods was severely constrained. The modern single man, he has more comforts, more options, more entertainment, more access and more connection than any previous generation of human beings,
Indeed.
let alone any previous generation of single men.
Indubitably.
Solitude has gone from being a hardship to being, in many cases, a luxury. And that fundamental shift in the practical experience of bachelorhood has changed the calculation in ways the cultural critics still have not fully internalized. The third force is the rise of information sharing among men. For most of human history, men made romantic and marital decisions with limited data. They followed the script. They trusted the cultural narrative. They learned from a small circle of older male relatives whose experiences may or may not have applied to their situation. Today, a 22-year-old man in any developed country has access to the testimonies, warnings, analyses, and lessons of millions of older men. Men who got divorced. Men who paid for decades. Men who built lives outside the conventional path and reported back on what they discovered. Men who watched the same shifts unfold and developed frameworks for interpreting them. Young men today are walking into adult romantic decisions with a depth of information that no previous generation has had access to, and they are using that information to make different decisions than their fathers made. This is not pathology. This is rational behavior. Humans, when given more information, make different decisions than humans operating in informational darkness. The fourth force is the cultural recalibration of masculinity itself. For the last 15 to 20 years, mainstream culture has, in many quarters, communicated to men that traditional masculine pursuit was suspect, that masculine confidence was problematic,
Man
that
bad, women
sexuality
good.
was by default predatory, that masculine ambition without checks was toxic. Men absorbed these messages for years. Men adapted to them. Men became more cautious, more guarded, more emotionally protected in mixed environments. And then eventually men did what humans always do when an environment becomes hostile or exhausting to navigate. They withdrew from that environment to places where they could breathe more freely. Their work, their gym, their brotherhood, their personal projects, their solo lives. The cultural environment did not just make men less effective at pursuing romance, it made them less interested in doing so. And once interest fades, no amount of cultural messaging or financial incentive can rebuild it artificially. The fifth force, and this is the deepest one, is the rise of self-mastery as an alternative life script for men.
I like working
traditional
on
narrative of male life
self-mastery.
centered
I've
on
been
external
working really
achievement.
hard at it
Get the wife,
lately.
get the kids, get the house, get the title, earn the status that the surrounding culture would recognize and validate. The new narrative, increasingly available, increasingly attractive, increasingly modeled by men who are very visibly thriving inside it, centers on internal mastery. Master your body, master your finances, master your craft, master
I'm
your
getting
mind,
really good at it.
master your habits. Become, through deliberate effort over decades, a man who has built himself into something genuinely excellent.
I want
And
to
here
be
is the part that is so
legendary.
disruptive to the old cultural script. The self-mastery path is intrinsically rewarding.
It
Men
is.
who walk it report deep satisfaction,
It is
mental
very
clarity,
satisfying.
physical strength, financial growth, and a kind of internal peace that the conventional path often does not deliver. Once men
Indubitably.
experience that, the gravitational pull back toward the conventional script weakens dramatically. The male disengagement era is, at its deepest level, the result of large numbers of men discovering that the alternative life script genuinely works, and choosing it over
Yes,
the
it
conventional
does.
one. Now let me explain what it means that the era has arrived, because the consequences are not theoretical. They are unfolding in real time, all around us, in ways that are reshaping daily life. The dating market has fundamentally restructured. Women are reporting in unprecedented numbers that they cannot find suitable male partners.
Oh
The
no.
men they want to
Poor
date,
women.
high income, fit, intentional, mature, emotionally available, are increasingly outside the active dating market.
That's
They
like
have built lives
1%
that
of
do not
men.
require those rooms. And so women who expected those men to be findable are encountering instead a dating pool dominated by men who are either struggling, distracted, or strategic about a market where they have unprecedented leverage. The
Yeah.
conversation among women about this, happening in books, in podcasts, in therapy sessions, in late-night phone calls, is becoming impossible to ignore. Where are the good men is now one of the most common questions in mainstream cultural discussion. The answer is, they're exactly where they have always been. They're just no longer participating in the institutions that were designed to find them. The relationship industries are in crisis. Singles events are losing money. Matchmaking services are struggling. Dating apps are scrambling to redesign their business models. Wedding planning industries are facing demographic collapse. Anything built on the assumption that men would keep showing up to pursue, court, propose, and marry is now experiencing what business analysts call a structural revenue decline. Governments are panicking. South Korea is in active demographic crisis mode, with the president speaking publicly about the existential threat of low birth rates. Japan has been in this mode for decades and is increasingly desperate. China is openly addressing the consequences of young men opting out of marriage and family formation. European nations are throwing money at family incentive programs, and, predictably, none of these efforts are working because the issue is not financial. The cultural conversation is shifting. Mainstream media outlets that 5 years ago would never have published serious analysis of male disengagement are now covering it regularly. Academic studies are proliferating. Documentaries are being produced. Books are climbing bestseller lists. The conversation that men have been having privately for a decade is now becoming a public, mainstream, undeniable subject of analysis. And the men themselves, the ones who chose this path early, are increasingly visible. The fitness influencers, the entrepreneurs, the financial educators, the philosophers, the content creators who are modeling deliberate single male life are reaching enormous audiences. Young men growing up watching them are seeing alternative life scripts that previous generations did not have access to. This is one of the most consequential subcultures of the modern era, and it is no longer subcultural. It is approaching mainstream. Now let me speak directly to you, the men who made this choice early, the men who, when the rest of the world was still pretending the predictions were exaggerated, quietly made decisions about your own lives and started walking the path. You were right. You saw it before the data confirmed it. You felt it before the culture acknowledged it. You acted on it before the institutions adapted to it. That is not a small thing. That is the mark of a man who has the courage to act on his own observations, his own analysis, his own intuition, when the surrounding culture is telling him he's wrong, broken, or behind. You're not behind.
No.
You're not broken. You're not wrong. You're in fact one of the men who saw the future first.
Yay.
Shaped your life accordingly.
I'm a
Here is
visionary.
what your vindication does not allow you to do. It does not allow you to coast. It does not allow you to stop building. It does not allow you to assume that because you got the macro direction right, your individual life is now on autopilot toward greatness.
Fuck
The male
autopilot.
disengagement era is going to produce two categories of men. The first category will be men who use the freedom they reclaimed to build extraordinary lives.
That's
Their
what I'm
bodies will be
trying to do with
exceptional.
my life
Their
right
finances will
now.
compound into substantial wealth. Their skills will become rare and valuable.
I have a
Their
5-year
friendships
plan
will be deep and durable.
to
Their
get this, so
contributions
I'm
to
making
whatever fields
6
they chose
figures.
will be significant. These men will be the icons of the new era, the models, the proof that the path works.
Yay.
The second category will be men who use the freedom they reclaimed for nothing in particular. Drifted
Losers.
into consumption, entertainment, distraction,
Goyim.
and decay.
Plebs.
Who walked away from one structure but failed to build another. Who became, in the
Betas.
most charitable description, present tense survivors. Alive but not building, comfortable but not growing, free but not flourishing. The era will be won or lost in the difference between these two categories. The era will not in itself make you great. The era will give you the freedom that previous generations of men did not have. What you do with that freedom, that's where your story actually gets written. So if you're watching this and you have been part of this movement for years, take the vindication. Acknowledge
Okay.
that you were right.
Yay,
Feel
I
the
was
weight of
right.
being
I'm
among the
always
early
right
ones, and then immediately ask
95% of the
yourself the
time.
only question that matters from here. What am I building with the freedom I claimed? Because the era is here. The freedom is yours. And the next decade is going to be decided by what men like you do with the moment that history has handed you. Let me paint the picture of where this era is heading. Because we are still
I'm
early in
building
the
2
timeline.
businesses.
The era has arrived. But it is not complete. The next 20 years are going to define how this transition unfolds and what kind of world emerges on the other side. By 2030, only 4 years from now, single men will be openly recognized as a defining demographic of modern society. Industries will pivot to serve them. Real
Good.
estate will adapt to them. Travel, fitness, longevity, financial services, technology. All of these sectors
Yay.
will increasingly orient around the powerful single male as a primary customer rather than as a secondary afterthought. By 2035, the
Excellent.
cultural narrative around masculinity will have undergone a significant revision. The era of casual male bashing, which has already started to soften under the weight of consequences,
That's
will be
good.
largely behind us. The conversation about men
Excellent.
will be more honest, more nuanced, and more grounded in the recognition that men, like all humans, respond to incentives and environments. Where the environment served them, they participated. Where the
Indeed.
environment failed them, they withdrew.
Indeed.
This recognition will increasingly inform how cultures discuss masculinity, family and partnership. By 2040, the demographic shifts initiated during this era will be reshaping every developed country in fundamental ways. Population decline, aging societies, restructured economies, transformed political systems, different cultural compositions through changed immigration patterns. The world of 2040 is going to look profoundly different from the world of 2026, and the male disengagement we are documenting now will be recognized as one of the major causes of that transformation. By 2050, the entire framework of male and female life paths will have evolved. New social structures will have emerged to fill the spaces left by the decline of traditional marriage and family formation. New communities, new living arrangements, new definitions of partnership, brotherhood, and chosen family. The institutions that defined adult life for 1,000 years will have either adapted dramatically or faded into something more historical than contemporary. And the men who lived through this transition, who are alive right now in 2026 watching it unfold, are going to be the generation that future historians study most intensively. The ones who witnessed
Okay.
the threshold, the ones who chose
Interesting.
early to walk a different path, the ones whose individual decisions, in aggregate, created the macro shift that everyone is now noticing. You are part of that generation. You are part of the historical moment, the choices you
Cool.
make in the next 10 years, in the next 5 years, in the next year, they matter. They contribute to the texture of what this era becomes. They are part of how the story will be told. Let me bring this all home. The male disengagement era is no longer a prediction. The era is here. The data is overwhelming. The pattern is global. The forces driving it are deep, structural, and not reversible by any policy intervention currently being attempted. If you've been part of this movement, if you saw it early, if you acted on it before the data caught up, if you built your life on principles that the surrounding culture only now is starting to recognize as legitimate, you are not alone. You're not isolated. You're not a curiosity. You're part of one of the most significant demographic and psychological shifts of the modern era.
Cool.
Every statistic in this video confirms what your instincts told you years ago. Every government panicking in 2026 is responding to a trend you were already part of in 2020. Every cultural article documenting the dating recession is describing a reality you understood before the writers did. You were early, you were right, you were ahead. And
I'm usually ahead.
I
like to be 3 steps ahead.
Because the era is going to belong to the men who built
for
inside
everything.
of it. Not the men who simply opted out of the old script. The men who used the freedom they claim to construct something genuinely valuable with their lives. That is your assignment. That is the next chapter. That is what separates the men who will be remembered from the men who will be forgotten. Not whether you chose this path. The path is now well documented and increasingly populated. What separates the few from the many is what you build along the way. Build your body, build your wealth, build your skills, build your brotherhood.
I'm building all those things.
Build your character. Build a life so substantial that it stands as a contribution to your own existence, to the men who will look to you, for example.
Exactly.
To the era that you are part of shaping. The male disengagement era is not the end of anything important. It is the beginning of something new. And men like you, the early ones, the awake ones, the ones who saw it before the data did, are exactly the men who get to decide what that new thing becomes.
Excellent.
If this video hit you the way I hope it did, if you felt vindicated, validated, energized by hearing the data finally confirm what you've been seeing for years, then I need you to do 3 things right now.
Okay.
First, drop a comment below. Tell me when you saw this coming. Tell me what made you walk this path before the data caught up. Tell me what your life looks like now as one of the early ones. Let the other men watching this know that they are not alone, that millions of men, quietly around the world, were seeing this and acting on it long before the mainstream caught up. Second, if this video resonated, smash that like button right now. Not for me, for the algorithm. So this message reaches every man who has been waiting for someone to tell him that he was not crazy, that what he saw was real, that what he chose was right, that what he is building is part of something historic. Third, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications.
I'm already
We are building
subscribed.
a community of men who think with depth, who see clearly, and who act decisively on what they observe. A community for the men who are early. A community for the men who refuse to live the default life.
Fuck
A
the
community for the
default
men who are
life.
constructing
That's
the next
lame
era
and
with their own
boring.
hands, their own discipline, their own decisions. Every week, I drop content like this. Content that documents the era we are living through. Content that gives you the data, the perspective, and the wisdom to navigate the next decade with clarity. If you stay with me, I promise, your understanding of yourself, your time, and your generation will only sharpen. Until next time,
Cool.
keep building. Keep
I
choosing
will
yourself.
keep building.
Keep walking the path. The
I
era is
will.
here, the data is in, the world is catching up. And you, the early ones, the awake ones, the ones who knew before the proof arrived, you're exactly where you need to be. Make this era
Yes,
your
I
moment.
am.
Make your life the proof. And let the men who come after you study what you built and know that this was the generation that saw it first, said it first, and shaped it first. Peace.
Well, that's it for today's video, everyone. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by Christmas, because that's how many subscribers I need to start making money off of YouTube. Thank you, everybody that that's already subscribed to my channel, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you. You're helping me reach my goals. Peace out. See you in the next video. Bye.